the UFC, the UEFA Finals, the U.S. Open Championship, the MLB All-Star Game, the NFL, Big Ten football, and the FIFA World Cup. The world's biggest events are on Fox Sports.
From Chesapeake, Virginia, WHKT presents Sports Scene. Sports Scene features local, regional, and nationally acclaimed guests and excellent interviews. Follow Sports Scene on Twitter at Greg Bick. Now here is Greg Bicouvaris.
All right, thank you very much, Joe Daniel. January 3rd, 2018. Happy New Year. I was off last week, snow tubing in Massanutten. Hope you enjoyed the Best of show. Job well done by Joe Daniel as we had Jeff Jones and Jay Randolph as our encore guests from earlier this year. Sports Scene, an interview show each Wednesday from 12 to 1. Also watch sports highlights on nnpstv.com. Big program announcement coming up after 12:30 about this show, where it will air in the near future as of next week and also online. Tell your friends about gjbtv.com and click the YouTube link on the homepage for archived audio and video. Twitter at Greg Bick, and you can see the rest of my Twitter handles on gjbtv.com in the contact section. Thank you to our military. Guest lineup presented by Meat Casita with 2 locations in Virginia Beach. Sponsors on gjbtv.com, marketplace sponsors, and Hampton Roads onlinemall.com. Phone line presented by Spaghetti Eddie's, with 1 location now right here off Taylor Road. Show presented by HRSMHOF.com. That's Hampton Road Sports Media Hall of Fame. Check out the website. NFL coaching changes galore. Playoffs are all set. So is the national championship between Alabama and Georgia. Should be special. 2 SEC teams. College basketball and NBA in full swing. Great interviews, business segments, highlights, commentary. What teased me off? Thank you for making the habit to listen to Sports Scene weekly, and we love our regulars, newcomers, and tourists. Well, the weather's not too bad right now, but it'll probably change in the next 24 hours. Be safe. Sit back now and listen to Sports Scene live right here on 1650 AM, 92.5 FM, tunein.com by typing in WHKT.
Catch up on archived editions of Sports Scene by going to gjbtv.com and clicking the YouTube image on the homepage. Now back to Sports Scene with Greg Bicouvaris.
You hear the music? And, of course, stay tuned for a big announcement after 12:30 about Sports Scene. You don't want to miss it. Right here, the premier sports interview show in Hampton Roads. All right, we've had this gentleman on during Sports Highlights. He's been on Sports Scene on several stations I've hosted over the years. We count him a friend of the program. From Russell Street Report, the editor-in-chief, let's welcome Tony Lombardi. How are you, my friend?
Hey, Greg, I'm great. How are you?
Very good. Happy New Year to you. Yeah, you as well. You as well. And, of course, how's the weather, of course, in the White Marsh, Baltimore area right now?
It's chilly. It's not. It feels like polar white. It's just crazy. You know, it's only just turned into January, and it feels like it's been winter forever already.
Yeah, I know. We're just getting started with winter. Of course, we had very cold weather yesterday. It's better today, but it's supposed to be dire tonight, so go figure the weather. But as you know, in the NFL, they play no matter what the weather is. You've seen the snowballs over the year. Give us your background, your Twitter, and your bio as well.
My Twitter is RSR for Russell Street Report, RSR Lombardi, and you can find us on Facebook at Ravens247. My background, we started Ravens 24/7 back in 2003, kind of as a hobby. Sort of took on a new life when people asked if they could advertise with us. We got into the radio business a little bit to kind of promote the website. It's taken on a life of its own, and now we've been at this for, I guess it's 14 years now, Greg, and time flies when you're having fun.
It sure is. Of course, you had a birthday recently as well, and the Colts came back in town right near your birthday, and a lot going on, but we've had you on Sports Highlights. Let's get right to business. Well, Marvin Lewis is supposed to retire or either step down prior to Sunday when they took on the Ravens. And the Bengals, played well at the beginning, looked flat as the game went on. and all of a sudden they came to life within the last few moments of the fourth quarter. It seemed like whatever fans were there left in that freezing cold, it took the breath out of Baltimore.
It was a gut punch. It was a lot like that Christmas Day night game when the Steelers won at the very end. And the frustrating thing for Ravens fans, and I'm sure for the front office and the team as well, is that they spent this offseason swearing that wasn't going to happen to them again. If they got a lead late in the fourth quarter, they were going to try to dial it up like they used to with the Ravens defense in the past. When you look at the Ravens statistics over history, they've had an incredible amount of success when they've led in the fourth quarter because of defense and being able to get off the field. But since 2016, and actually goes back before that, it started, if you remember, during that quasi-meltdown in the Super Bowl when the defense just started to fall apart at the end against the 49ers. And since then, the Ravens just haven't been able to get off the field on third and fourth down in the fourth quarter when it matters the most. And I think that this game against the Bengals was indicative of that. So, Dean Pease is retiring, but I'm not so sure he wouldn't have been fired if he chose not to retire.
Yeah, Harbaugh going to his 11th year next year. Of course, Billick didn't go that long. He won a Super Bowl as well, and he got kind of flat toward the end of his tenure. But if you look, and we'll talk more about Dean Pease and your credit in a second, if you look at that last play, which Dalton threw a perfect pass, it looked like the Ravens' body language, like they got this, nothing's going to happen, and all of a sudden it just got fiery quick.
Yeah, it really did. I was looking at the all-22 shots of that particular play. And the Ravens had 3 guys showing blitz at the line of scrimmage, and all of them backed out into zone coverages. Well, Weddle, because he was at the line of scrimmage, he didn't get back in time. It looked like it probably was his assignment to be in that deep middle, and he didn't get back in time. And then you had Mosley trying to get back. He leaped to try to tip the ball. But when you look at that all-22, you think that Dalton dropped the ball into a bucket when he really didn't. If he leads Taylor Boyd, he never even has to avoid would-be tacklers. He could just waltz into the end zone, and it was kind of not the greatest throw in the world or decision by Dalton to throw it where he did because he threw it back towards the Ravens' coverage. But at the end of the day, it worked out for the Bengals, and you've probably seen the video highlights of the Buffalo Bills in their locker room celebrating after that. It was pretty crazy, but every time I see that on NFL Network or ESPN, it's another kick in the gut, Greg.
Yeah, because you look at the games during the regular season, it's funny, the Ravens beat the Bengals the first time, but this time just totally different team, and they were playing better. Them and the Chargers were the 2 scary teams. Neither one made it, and that's the bottom line. It's who's in the postseason. Once again, for several years in a row now, Tony, the Ravens are not, for whatever reason.
4 out of the last 5 years, 3 straight seasons, and you keep hearing locally that, get Joe Flacco to the playoffs. He turns it on, and things happen that this team's built for December and January football. Well, you get lured into that kind of thinking because you hear it so much from the team, but it really isn't true. There's got to be a lot of changes made on this team, and when you look at their draft history, probably over the last almost decade, but particularly since the Super Bowl, they have not done well in the first 3 rounds. Now, Marlon Humphrey was a great pick for them. He played extremely well as a rookie in a tough spot or a tough position at corner as a rookie in the NFL. But other than that, there haven't been a lot of really productive draft picks for the Ravens. Tavon Young was a good pick in 2016, but he was out with an ACL tear from training camp. And Matt Judon, he's played pretty well. He was a 2016. Henry is a 4th-round pick. But those first-day picks, or those first- and second-day picks, the ones that are supposed to be your money picks, they just don't have performed well for the Ravens. And after a while, that costs you. And right now, they're up against it as far as the cap's concerned.
Right. We're talking to Tony Lombardi from Russell Street Report. That's a great point. His second half of his interview is brought to you by Sakura Japanese Restaurant in Chesapeake. They deliver through OrderUp.com, 410-4577. Go by and see Jasmine for some great Japanese cuisine 7 days a week for lunch and dinner at 1437 Sam's Drive in the Walmart Way Crossing. This is not the time of the year. It's too early, even though the draft is around the corner. The Ravens would rather be talking postseason, not the draft in early January.
You're absolutely right. And I think the first thing you're going to be talking about is what's their coaching staff going to look like. Who's going to replace Dean Pease, and will Marty Morningway come on? Because They look at that offense, and yeah, they scored a lot more points after the bye. I think they averaged close to 29 or 28 points a game for the last 7 games of the season, and that's not so bad when you're supposed to have a good defense. But when you take a look inside the numbers, you look at some teams that were starting quarterbacks that were backup quarterbacks. They didn't play a very difficult schedule, and they led the league in turnover ratio, so you would expect them to score more points. So a lot of those points that they're crediting the offense for really is, in part, a game of managing field position and winning the battle of turnovers.
Right. Let me ask you a question. Flacco, of course, won the Super Bowl, but his body language on the sideline when the cameras are on him, Tony, are you noticing he looks unhappy? He just looks like he's cold, he's tired, been there, done that. I'm an elite quarterback, and I don't see a lot of joy coming from his face. I
agree with you. He's a guy. Now, he's not a very emotional guy one way or the other. And I think in a way that helps him come playoff time when everybody else's adrenaline is just on overload and everybody's juiced up and maybe they're overly anticipating plays and things like that. He's just calm and collected, and that may play in his favor when it comes playoff time. But you're right about it. I don't know that Joe Flacco loves the game of football, because when you look at some of these other quarterbacks around the league, and he's been criticized for this a lot, you look at some of the other quarterbacks, whether they've had a failure or a success in the field, when quarterbacks come off, they're usually huddling with their offensive coordinator, or they have a tablet in front of them. Joe rarely has a tablet in front of him, and even when he does, he's looking at it begrudgingly, as though he doesn't really want to. I've often kidded, just give him an Etch-a-Sketch. Maybe he'll have more fun.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. Look at Dalton. Here he was. His coach could have been gone as far as retiring on his own. They had nothing to play for. They weren't going to the postseason. It was cold. It was New Year's Eve. And, of course, they looked like they had everything on the line. Dalton, of course, positive, upbeat always with his foundation. He looked like the quarterback that had everything that was counting on him, the thread, while the Ravens didn't. I just don't get that lack of urgency in that last play. And, that, unfortunately, with the games they lost earlier, the close games, cost them.
I agree with you. There's something about the love of the game. And the Ravens, when they're drafting players, they'll tell you they look for guys who are fast, competitive, smart, and love the game of football. And Joe Flacco, to me, he looks like he's a guy that is really happy where he is in life in general, but that football is just a job. And that's not the kind of guy you want leading your team, in my opinion.
No, because he's still got plenty of years. I'm very impressed. I was at your game against Detroit. Very impressed by Collins. Love his spunk, love his attitude.
Yeah, he's a guy that does love the game of football, and he's got something to prove. He was outed by, the Seahawks. They didn't have a lot of confidence in him. I'm sure they wish they had not made that move because the Seahawks could have used him. But he's a guy that is a really good kid, loves the game of football, really is hard on himself when he fumbles, and he fumbled twice, I think, in the first 2 games. Since then, he's only fumbled once, and he's worked real hard to correct that. So hats off to his extra work and to Thomas Hammond for working with him, the Ravens running back coach.
Absolutely. Talking to Tony Lombardi from the Russell Street Report. Talk about the Dean Pease scenario. It just seemed like he was tired, but he brought up a good point. He talked about a former Ravens assistant that passed away right around the same age and really didn't have a chance to smell the roses.
You're talking about Dean Pease?
Yes, but one of the assistants from last year, he passed away, and Pease talked about that.
Brooks.
Yes.
Clarence Brooks, yes. Clarence Brooks, what a beautiful man that guy was. I tell you, he was just, the players loved him. Anybody that came in contact loved him. If you were out in the practice field and you heard a lot of bowling alley words and F-bombs and things like that, they were usually coming from Clarence Brooks, but that's because he was so into every practice, coached these guys up so well, and there's a reason why the Ravens' defensive line rotation was amongst the best in the league for a number of years. Clarence Brooks was dearly, dearly missed, and I'm sure losing a guy like that, I've heard that Dean Pease considered retiring last year, but I'd heard back in early December that he was retiring. I put it out there, and then, I think it was last week, over the weekend, Adam Schefter put it out that Dean Pease was retiring. And I'm like, hey, wait a minute, I told you about that on December the 6th, but I guess I'm not Adam Schefter, which is, of course, true. But that said, I think Dean Pease, he's very well respected by his players, his peers, and his colleagues love him. But I just think that he's got a thumbprint on defense, and that thumbprint isn't always the greatest, and that is he gives up leads in the fourth quarter. His defenses play not to lose instead of to win, and I think that was indicative on that very last play, 4th and 12. You saw all through that second half when they pressured Andy Dalton, he was rattled, and they didn't pressure him on that last play. So, shame on them for not doing so. Otherwise, they're probably talking about a playoff berth in Kansas City this week.
And they didn't look exactly great against the Colts earlier, how was the atmosphere with the Colts coming to town? I know they don't come there that often. I've seen them play there a few times during the playoff game. And, of course, several years ago. Is still the same uniforms? Any nostalgia? There's people that still remember them from, the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s even still are still, the 40 and over still remember the Baltimore Colts. Was there any nostalgia, any negativity during that evening?
No, I think that has that ship sort of sailed. I think that people have gotten over that. You're seeing a shift in the crowd, the people that are in the stadium. There's younger faces in the stadium. The people that are middle-aged folks like myself. They're not going out to the games as frequently as they used to. They're giving their kids their tickets and that sort of thing. And I think that's why you're seeing that those kids, the millennials, just aren't, generally speaking, as married to the team as the generation before them. And I think that's why you're seeing that's in part why the crowds are down. In the past, I don't care. We talked about it being cold on New Year's Eve, but in the past that never mattered. I remember playing against the Denver Broncos on, I think it was also the New Year's Eve back in 2000, and that was the first playoff game the Ravens ever played at M&T Bank Stadium or ever, and they won that game. It was brutally cold that day and really windy, and that place was packed. The tailgate lots were packed. Now, I know it was a newer thing for the Ravens fans at that time. Maybe they're somewhat spoiled at this point in time because of some of the successes, but I would never in my wildest dreams, Greg, ever thought that a team that was in the mix and trying to make their way into the playoffs would have a stadium that was half filled like that one was.
Talking to Tony Lombardi from Russell Street Report, Greg Bicouvaris at Greg Bick on Twitter, GREGBIC, 1650 AM, 92.5 FM, tunein.com. Type in WHKT. Next point, empty seats all around the NFL stadium. They talk about ratings going down. They still dominate the other sports. Let's not get too carried away. I think the national anthem did affect it. I think that's kind of died down a little bit. Still, the players are entitled. They act like it. And, of course, the salaries, are dictated by the television and, of course, the owners and everything else that goes with it, sponsorship. But let's face it, we live in a millennial age now, and the attendance is going down not only in football, but basketball, baseball, all the professional sports. People don't have that type of time. I think football is always going to have the advantage because it's a once-a-week event, though.
I think you're right, and it's a great point because if you look around, I think I saw something on Twitter the other day of the 50 most viewed TV events in 2017. 36 of those were sports-related, and 25 of those were NFL-related. So they still are king in terms of viewing. But at the same time, I think, Greg, that the cost of going to games coupled with the inconveniences of going to games, whether that be the parking, the traffic, the bathroom lines, concession lines, and then the advances in technology at home with TV prices coming down, and even local pubs and things like that, I think are benefiting from people just would rather do those things, it seems to me, than go down to the stadium. I said that Steve Bisciotti, because we get to sit down with him once a year, and Ravens owner Steve Bisciotti, and I asked him once, do you think that in the future new stadiums that are built might be smaller? And he sort of laughed at me. And I thought that, that's sort of, and I like Steve immensely. He's a great guy. But I think that's indicative of how the ownerships around the league they just never thought that their armor would crack. And now it's starting to crack. And I'm not sure that they have the answers for it.
What about the coaching changes? Which one is the most intriguing? The Raiders, Giants, Cardinals, Bears, Giants. Which one's the most intriguing?
Well, I think the most intriguing is John Gruden getting back in the coaching ranks. And I'll miss him on Monday Night Football because, I know a lot of people criticize him because he loves everything, but I think his quirky sense of humor is entertaining for me to tune in and probably stay with Monday Night Football even when the bad games are appearing on a regular basis. It's more entertaining for me to listen to him. But I think of all the coaching changes, John Gruden back to the Raiders and then going into Vegas at some point in time, that to me by far is the most intriguing of the coaching changes.
And a lot of Ravens assistants let go, including Caldwell with the Lions and, of course, Pagano talking about coming back to the Ravens. But, you know, Fox, to me, he's a retread, for the Bears. It just seemed like Fox was just tired and old all of a sudden very quickly, still living off that Super Bowl with Carolina.
Yeah, I think, when you look around the league, and we've said this many times, that the league is a copycat kind of league. And when you look at the success of the LA Rams and how they had all that talent but never could seem to get it together on the field, you got a young guy, what's he, 31, or he's not even 31 yet, I don't think. He's 30 or 31, and he's turned that franchise around with his innovative approach to football. I think there's owners that are looking to replace coaches around the league saying, get me one of those guys. Get me one of those high-energy guys that can really motivate my team because I know I've got the talent. Let me see if I can get this new guy to stir the drink, and maybe one of those guys. So I think the retread kind of guys that you mentioned, like the John Foxes and the Chuck Paganos, those guys are going to have to go back into the coordinator ranks.
30 seconds combined total for these predictions. Only one game is in cold weather, the Titans and Chiefs. Give me your prediction real quick. Titans
I
or
think
Chiefs?
The Titans, I don't think they're that great of a team. They sort of stumbled into the playoffs. I see Kansas City covering the 8-point spread there. As far as the Jacksonville-Buffalo game, I think that Buffalo was opportunistic, took advantage of some things that were presented to them, but I don't think they're very good defensively or offensively. I think Jacksonville takes it to them and covers that 8-point spread. New Orleans and Carolina, I think that's going to be a really good game. That's a 6.5-point line. Saints are favored. I like New Orleans, but I don't think that they're going to cover. Same thing with the Rams and Falcons. I think that's going to be an exciting game, but I don't think the Falcons are as good a team away from home. I think the Rams take care of business, but they don't cover the 6.5-point line.
Tony, great job. All the credit to going to get the Dean Pease story. All the best to you in Russell Street Report. We hope to talk to you soon. Happy New Year. Best of health to you and your family.
Same to you, Greg, anytime. Thank you.
Thank you. My pleasure. Tony Lombardi from Russell Street Report, getting the inside scoop around the NFL. Sports Scene will continue with a big announcement after these messages. Stay tuned.
Interact with Sports Scene on Twitter at Greg Bick. Email bicogb@hotmail.com. Now back to Greg Bicouvaris in the Hampton Roads OnlineMall.com studios. It's now time for Greg's Highlights, presented by HamptonRoadsOnlineMall.com.
All right, thank you to Tony Lombardi for our first guest. Don't forget this will be archived later on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube by going to gjbtv.com, hitting the YouTube link. Of course, question presented by Buffalo Wild Wings and Newport News to Joe Daniel. With the New Year's resolutions going on, health, happiness to all, of course, that should be the basics, peace. Do you see the glass half full or half empty for the most part in your day-to-day life?
So like a pessimist versus optimist kind of question. Let's see. I think in normal life, I don't know, maybe I think I'm honestly a little bit of a cynic. I kind of see the glass kind of half empty. I want to give people the benefit of the doubt in that sense, but I don't know. I mean, sometimes the situation, you kind of have to look at it, or I have a tendency to look at a glass half empty, and that's probably a good New Year's resolution, to start looking at situations and life and a more positive, optimistic outlook.
Right, with all the world news especially going on, or the local news too. Really, of course, too, as well. Save the date for Sports Scene, HamptonRoadsOnlineMall.com. Browse, shop, visit, bookmark it. Really a great website for restaurants, retail, and much more. GJBTV.com, HamptonRoadsOnlineMall.com, and HRSMHOF.com. Of course. All right, starting the week of January the 8th. This show will be on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook, usually Wednesday or Thursday, but we'll be moving Sports Scene from Wednesday 12 to 1 after 4 years plus a month or so to Saturdays 1 to 2. Sometimes it'll be live, sometimes it'll be taped, but Joe Daniel and I will produce this together like we are now. This show will be on starting next week, Saturday from 1 to 2, but it will be online available first.
Correct, exactly right. I'll get it up there Wednesday evening at the latest. Should have it up by Tuesday even at the earliest, Tuesday afternoon at the earliest. So if you want to get a kind of a sneak peek of what's going to air on Saturday, that's a great way to do it. Tell your friends, hey, I heard this great show, this interview is going on. Let your friends know, and then they can listen to it live on Saturday between 1 and 2.
And I want to thank my loyal audience for 4 years from 12 to 1 on Wednesday. I'm not going anywhere. My company's not going anywhere. I'm just moving the show for convenience from Wednesday to Saturday as well. for my time, my talent, and my treasure both. But sometimes it'll be live, other times it'll be taped. We're going to have a lot of fun regardless. The show will continue, it'll sustain, it'll be bigger and better in 2018. Also, other news going on too as well for sports. We mentioned the show as well moving to Saturdays next week, actually, from 1 to 2. A lot going on in college football, the NFL, the NHL, the NBA, of course, as well, and a lot to look forward to in the sports world. Not to mention the Olympics are right around the corner. Joe Daniel, you got to wonder, too, how that's going to play out with the Olympics in South Korea, with North Korea so ornery right next door. Not to mention North Korea is now saying, well, we might send a delegation.
Yeah, I heard
but
about
regardless, it's almost like total uneasiness and awkwardness.
It is. And it's going to probably have some kind of influence on the athletes who are that close to such questioning and what's going to happen. And it's a good athlete because, yes, good athletes are obviously in peak physical condition, but they are also in peak mental condition in order to block out all the negative stuff and just concentrate on the task at hand and not have it influence their performance. So it'll be interesting.
Right. They still have to sleep at night.
Yeah.
I mean, regardless. All right, Panera, all items 100% clean. They deliver catering. Take advantage of the rapid pickup option. Soups, sandwiches, salads, bagels, bread, smoothies, breakfast sandwiches. Yum, yum, yum. Get some hot soup in this winter month. Cookies, desserts, refreshing beverages. Go by and see Brian and the staff. Start your day at PaneraBread.com. Food as it should be. They're in Suffolk, Virginia at 6255 College Drive in Harborview. Give them a call at 483-3670 for more. Go to PaneraBread.com. Really good food. Brian and the staff will take care of you 7 days a week. All right, stay tuned for more of a sports scene after these messages right here. And stay tuned now first for the Washington Wizards Report.
The NBA honors. I'm Dave Johnson with the Washington Wizards Shoot-Around Report. Bradley Beal is the NBA Eastern Conference Player of the Week, and head coach Scott Brooks notes.
I mean, I've said it for now, going on the second year, Brad's an all-star. I thought he was an all-star last year and led us in a lot of different games. And it's not just the points, it's the defensive play that he does, it's the passing.
Part of his Week 9 assist against the Bulls.
You know, for me, it was just staying aggressive, taking what the defense gave me and taking advantage of my matchups.
Beal, edge of the circle, left elbow, drive, slam, two hands. Bradley Beal came off the screen, and he shut the door. Yeah, Beal finished with 39 against the Bulls, and now with the Knicks in town.
We got to get back to doing whatever it takes to win, man. Not get comfortable with the win a night or two ago. You know, each game is different. Each opponent is going to be different, but there's something that you can always control, and that's how hard you play. So if we do that, we'll be good.
It is the Wizards and Knicks, 6:45 Wednesday night on the WGL Washington Wizards Radio Network.
You are listening to Sports Scene with Greg Bicouvaris. Now, back to Greg.
All right, welcome back to Sports Scene, live right here on 1650 AM, 92.5 FM at 1240 at Greg Bick on Twitter. Also, our good friends at Buffalo Wild Wings. It's lunchtime. What are you waiting for? Lunch, dinner, appetizers, mozzarella sticks, salads, boneless, traditional wings, burgers, wraps, tenders, macs, beverages, desserts, a great kids menu, all the games on TV, wings, beer, sports. Go by and see Paul and the great staff 7 days a week, lunch, dinner, late night, great munchies, of course, right next to Patrick Henry Mall in Newport News. Give them a call at 249-3999. Excellent food at Buffalo Wild Wings. See all the playoff games, college basketball, and, of course, the NBA at Buffalo Wild Wings. Big location in Newport News. Let's welcome a regular monthly guest, George McClain, owner, general manager, firearms instructor from the Marksmen in Newport News. Happy New Year, my friend.
Happy New Year to you, Greg. I hope you're off to a good start.
Yes, only day 3, so let's all do it. And I guess to give a New Year's resolution, George, it really comes down to us and our attitude, whether we work or we deal with the public or deal with the private, whatever. It starts with the person's attitude when they walk out the door in the morning.
Yeah, everything comes from within. So attitude is, that's 100% of the game. Got a bad attitude, regardless of what you're going to do, you're probably not going to be quite as successful as you may with the better attitude. And the better attitude has you accepting good results as well as not so good results. You just have to sometimes back up and regroup and take a different path.
One topic you and I have never discussed in our monthly interview is how the weather can affect safety in firearms too, because whether you lose the power when it's 100 degrees in the summer or when it gets dark early at 5 o'clock in the winter and you lose power, or it gets very cold or snow, your safety can still be at risk.
Well, that's true. And, of course, safety is multifaceted, whether you're talking about maybe the safety of your home or safety of going to or from your business or place of work, or the safety of actually handling that firearm itself when you throw in very cold temperatures, possibly sub-zero, not that we typically see that here in this part of Virginia, but other parts do, or if you're trying to manipulate a firearm with gloves on because it's cold. So that safety aspect, when we talk of that, can cover many different areas. But yes, it's still very important, and the weather can affect it.
You're exactly right, because even trying to put your keys in your pocket or starting your car with gloves is not easy, or opening up your trunk with gloves. So you can imagine handling a firearm in the dead of winter is daunting.
Yeah. So everyone needs to be aware of that, and we don't see a whole lot of glove weather down here. I typically don't wear gloves just because of the interference with the firearm, but a lot of people do that may not be into the firearm end of it. As an instructor, there's a lot of things that a lot of areas or angles that I may look at that the typical individual does not, and those gloves, to me, is a huge detriment, because it can interfere with the functioning of the firearm, or it may cause you, if you're not used to that, of actually dropping that firearm, or God forbid getting that finger on the trigger, which we tell you never to do until you're on your target and you are ready and intentionally wanting to fire that gun. But it could get caught on the trigger, and you pull it back, you pull the trigger back, and inadvertently discharge the firearm. So I don't do that for that reason. But if you wear gloves, you just need to be aware that they can interfere.
Talking about the marksman, George McClain, owner, general manager, firearms instructor, folks. His phone number is 872-4130 at 520 Industrial Park Drive in Newport News. Indoor shooting range, firearm sales, professional training, open 7 days a week. There's something for everyone. This past weekend, I worked the Duke Florida State game for CBS in Durham. I had to leave like around 4 o'clock in the morning, and driving through 58 in Suffolk and Franklin and Emporia and Southampton, Greensville County, Broadnax. That's a rural area there. And I noticed a lot more people there had pickup trucks, had guns, and that rural area is a totally different dynamic of safety when you're really kind of like all alone with houses being spread apart, not near the city, compared to living in city life and needing a gun then as well.
Well, that's true. And if you had a chance to stop and talk to a lot of those people, you probably would find out that they're more safe and you are more safe being around them than a lot of other places, because a lot of that area that you just talked about is a lot like the area in West Virginia that I grew up in. And, it's people just have a whole different attitude. And when I say safe, it doesn't mean that a bad guy is not going to come up and try to rob you, but you're safe in that those who typically would carry handguns typically know what they're doing. Does that make sense? We get a lot of people that jump on that bandwagon, and I see that more in cities. And I'm not putting one up or down, above or below the other, because I now live in the city, but I was born and raised in the backcountry of West Virginia. And you get a lot of people that they look at a gun deal and they grab it, and if they're legal age, they go in and get it, but they fail to see the need for the training. Everyone thinks, well, that's a gun. You point at what you want to shoot at and pull the trigger. That's all there is to it. Well, we all know that that's not the case. That it's a little bit more in-depth than that, a little bit more complicated, although it's not complicated, but there's more to it than just pointing a gun and pulling the trigger.
Absolutely. Talking to George McClain. He's the owner of the Marksman. Google it in Newport News and learn about gun safety today. Your staff is always willing and waiting, open 7 days a week. And, of course, holidays. How did holiday sales go, George?
They went very well. Everyone motivated. We had a lot of good sales going on. We had still have, matter of fact, a Groupon deal, I think, going on for another month or so. So if they haven't jumped in to participate for that, check out Groupon, look at the Marksman. It's there. We've got a good deal on range and our firearms training simulator. So you can get in on either one or both of those. And so I think everyone has enjoyed it. Those that came on the simulator, did the same thing we always see. They came out shaking their heads like, wow. But it really gives you a whole different perspective.
Absolutely. Talking to George McClain from the Marksman as well. And you talk about the future. I think, the more educated people get about firearms, going to the Marksman will help them, help their family, help their neighbors, and especially when they're on their road as well. Because when you're on the road traveling, it's like you're an island all to yourself, and you got to be careful. And you can't just rely on public safety, but you got to be smart, and you just can't use a firearm. I think it's the one thing we've learned the most from you being on every month is just because you have a right to carry doesn't mean you have a right to use it.
Well, that's true. The circumstances are very constrained. The state of Virginia gives you basically what I tell my classes. They give you one opportunity to use the deadly force self-defense. It's broad-based, but that is when you have a reasonable fear, reasonable now becoming a legal term, but when you have a reasonable fear of death or serious bodily injury to yourself or another person. So that's it. And, that can be looked at and applied to many different circumstances. But, there's a lot of folks out there that will get a firearm and they'll get the permit that do not know that sentence that I just said, that having that reasonable fear, if you go and ask them, they've never heard that term before. And what's that tell you? Same thing it tells me, you haven't had the proper training. And that's where it starts. Our goal here is I don't want to read about you in the newspaper. I don't want to see you on TV, which means I don't want to see you as a victim of a bad guy that did you serious bodily harm or killed you or a family member because you did not have a means to defend yourself. And number two, I don't want to read about you as being arrested because you inappropriately used that lethal force self-defense. It was not legal for you to do that. And we fixed both of those cases with education. That's where it's got to start.
Right. It's right where a gunman who killed a Colorado sheriff's deputy escaped from the mental health ward of a VA hospital in Wyoming in 2014, but was located in return. But, stuff like that, mental health, then you got holiday stress, drama, you got families, unfortunately, shooting each other. I mean, you can't be too vigilant. You really got to just wonder. And I think that's important is mental health. What is the mental health of the person you're talking to every day? To avoid this.
Unfortunately, most of us don't know the answer to that. I mean, we only know the cover of the book we have to be looking at. And, the story within that book, the story within that person can change depending on circumstances. If they're, bipolar and, today you get the nice easygoing, person or maybe somewhat depressed and the next day they're totally different. Their personality is 180 degrees what it was the day before. And a lot of times, if you're around a person often enough, you're obviously going to see that. But if this is somebody you're just meeting on the street, you may not know who's approaching you and for what reason.
Unfortunately, family members too. George, all the best
Absolutely.
to you. Happy New Year. We'll talk to you again next month. Stay safe and be warm. What are you thinking about the weather tonight? What's your gut feeling?
I think we're probably going to get enough snow to affect operations at least tomorrow morning. So we're talked about it here. We're going to take a look at it. Obviously, I want employees to be safe. So we may delay opening if the road crews. If we wind up getting that 5, 6, 7, 8 inches that they're talking about, and they can't get the roads flat in time, we may wind up having to shut down all day. But we'll make that call tomorrow morning.
Yeah, but it looks better next week. George McClain, thank you so much from the Marksman. Enjoy your day.
Thanks, Greg. You too. Take care.
Thank you. George McClain right there. The owner and general manager, firearms instructor from the Marksman. I want to thank our good friends at Outback Steakhouse in Kempsville. Mike and the staff have a spacious dining area, bar, lunch and dinner daily. Great place to get some steaks, burgers, soups, salads, appetizers, pasta, chicken, seafood, ribs, chops, appetizers, yum, 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 desserts, beverages, dine in or carry out at Outback Steakhouse in Kempsville. Give them a call at 523-4832. For more, go to outback.com. Go by and see Mike and the great staff as well. Always learn something from George.
Yes, very knowledgeable, and you can tell that he has a lot of passion for what he does. And he obviously, like you said, cares about his employees and letting his employees know that, hey, if you're not going to come in, I'm not going to put you in danger for anything like that. So always enjoyed listening to George. And
really, too, I mean, it's a scary thing when it gets dark early and it's below freezing weather. And, people are desperate, and you have to take care of your family.
Absolutely. Got to look out for, your number one, which is, yourself and your family. Absolutely.
All right, we'll be back in about a minute or so after these messages from Spaghetti Eddie's and Finks. Stay tuned.
You are listening to Sports Scene with Greg Bicouvaris. Now, back to Greg.
All right, Little Tokyo Buffet in Hampton is open. Hibachi, Noodle Soup Bar, Sushi Bar, and Buffet Bar in Hampton, 325-8286. Go by and see Mr. Lyons and the great staff over there. Open 7 days a week in Hampton at 49 West Mercury Boulevard for lunch, dinner, little late night food as well. Little Tokyo Buffet, great buffet as well. Let's get to What Teased Me Off.
What Tees You Off? Presented by HamptonRoadsOnlineMall.com.
This doesn't really tee me off, but a reminder, Sports Scene will move to Saturday starting January 13th. From 1 to 2 p.m. will be archived online during the week at Greg Bick. For more, go to gjbtv.com. That will not change. We're just moving the live show from Wednesday to Saturday, 1 to 2. All right, what teased me off, Joe Daniel? Trying to get information sometimes from people can be very daunting. People want to hold information about work or about personal, about church or business, like it's like their little domain.
Yeah. It's got to be hard for, I'm thinking, like doctors as well, who are trying to ask you, do you have a history of this or doing this, having this kind of history, or do you drink, do you smoke, do you have this? I would imagine it'd be pretty difficult because you want to be honest, but at the same time, you're just like, he's going to judge me.
All right, let's say you're emailing your people about voice talent. We don't even mention the company. And they delay an email 1 or 2 days. That can affect your entire week.
Yeah, exactly. And it just recently something like that's happening because I'm wondering, what did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? Let me fix it. Let me work on this. Communication is obviously key and huge. And just letting me know, I think importantly, just I don't like what teased me off is not the callback. I want the callback saying,
or the email.
Yeah, we're not, unfortunately, even if it's just an automatic response or something, just a closure confirmation instead of this loose end emptiness that's just, we're just not going with you is what you're supposed to take from not hearing from
And especially if you rely on the email as the only means of communication. Let's say, like you and I talk on the phone, we text. But if you rely just on email or text and they don't respond for whatever reason, you're really doomed.
Yeah.
I mean, it's awkward, not on your part, their part. How about this? When you make a copy for, regular copy on paper, basic, but all of a sudden it has text on the other side of the paper. You're like, really?
You loaded it in wrong.
Who's the who's the cheapskate that put fresh paper in there?
Oh, yeah. I mean, recycling. That's important, Greg. Recycling.
That's true. Don't want to kill any trees. All right, when you call a specific person and the person you are calling says, hold on for a second, this person next to me wants to talk to you. You're like, really? I don't want to talk to you, nor do I want to talk to your family either. And I have no idea who that person is when you say, hold on, this so-called special person wants to talk to you. You know what I'm saying? You know how it is.
You're getting your call screened. That's what's happening. You're getting your call screened.
No, but they surprise you by they want you to talk to somebody else first. I mean, really? I didn't call that person. All right, people cannot talk without giggling, laughing, or just being inappropriate. Like you're having a conversation, like you're watching the people in the news, and they stop and start giggling constantly.
That's strange. It's got to be horrible. Like if you're in a movie theater, what if you're at a funeral and that happens? Oh gosh.
Well, you see the people in the morning, especially, I call them the giggle boxes. They don't stop laughing.
Yeah.
All right, how about this? The third wheel can be fun at times when you go out, but usually it's awkward and can be very, very tough unless it's maybe family.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, when you're going out or like the double date, you try to do the double date, but something happens and your date doesn't show up or isn't able to make it. And yeah, you are that third wheel in it. It can be very awkward. If you're with just like good friends, three people, not that big a deal, but it's just creating that certain scenario where just like, yeah, this would be a lot better if you had somebody else with me to partner up on some of this stuff.
Yep, it comes down to two's company, three's a crowd. I want to thank CBS, worked for them this past weekend at the Duke. Florida State game. Also got to ask Coach K a question. You can see it in the press conference on Duke's men's basketball page. I asked a question to Coach K. Very proud of that as well after the CBS game, too. Again, Sports Scene will be moving starting January 13th. Each Saturday from 1 to 2 p.m. will be live as well, or taped, regardless. Will also be archived on our normal times on Wednesday evening as well. I want to thank our guests today as well, Tony Lombardi and George McClain. For Joe Daniel, I'm Greg Bicouvaris. Happy Wednesday. Happy New Year. We'll talk to you soon.
AM 1650, WHKT Portsmouth, 92.5 FM, W223CT Norfolk. For your daily supply of news and talk, we are The Answer.